We're not equal. So I don't mean equal in value, but the ideologies that you go to bat for and the ideologies, or the ideology that I go to bat for is not equal. They're not equal in the realm of opinion. If my ideology is more aligned with truth, and that truth is bankable, meaning I'm able to sow it and reap a benefit. And when you sow your principle, you don't reap benefits. How the fuck can it be equal? Okay? Talking to the left. All right? So I could call you satanic, but you wouldn't understand that. You don't know the anatomy of Satan, so you don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. So I'll tell you this. God was the richest entity having the ability to create reality, what we know is to be reality. And the story of Lucifer is a guy who got salty with his benefactor and decided to put his benefactor in a chokehold and seek a justification for stealing the belongings of his benefactor. Mm. So what the fuck is any different with you? Because you Marxists, you whip yourselves, you whip the have-nots, you whip your fellow man into a lustful frenzy with a rationale that goes a little something like this. Those rich did something wrong to us, therefore we are justified in taking their shit. And so you can actually do the crime of theft, but feel justified. You have to criminalize the other person. You dehumanize the other person. In all wars, people dehumanize their enemy. I'm not actually dehumanizing you. I know exactly what you are. You're immature, short-sighted. The other thing that's going on there is you can't have a justified theft unless you're really wanting the spoils of that theft really hard. Now, what exacerbates your desire to go that far to acquire these things? It's the fact that either you lack skills or know-how or the certain aspect of will where you're willing to put out effort, blood, sweat, tears to bring about the thing that you want, to acquire it righteously or according to some means that right. The other thing that causes you to want, to acquire with such fervor is when a little acquisition is not enough for you because you're trying to cope with an emptiness from either a broken family or a cultural sphere that made a perfectly good upbringing seem insufficient. When you talk to that cultural sphere and you came from a perfectly peaceful family, they make you seem like you need more. And so the things that you acquire is not enough, just kind of ramping up your desire for more shit. So you become just like the original entity that we credit with these attributes, Satan. Satan, he created a lie. Even Jesus called him the father of lies, right? But the lie, the main lie of the beginning of the Bible was mischaracterizing God's motive for something that God instituted, right? So the mischaracterization gives birth to a justification, and then he leads Eve into a justified, basically a disobedient act or a crime of sorts against God. And then all of fallen people, instead of being farmers, we farm reality for joys, right? Instead of being joyful farmers or ones who tend the garden and produce joy, we sit in a space of needing more, finding that other people have more than us, and then justifying taking it. Now, I'm talking about the copycat killer who shot up a whole bunch of ICE agents from a high position today, which just happened shortly after the Charlie Kirk assassination. You think you're creating something new. You're not creating anything new. You just you love yourself too much. Um, like, why would these other people's lives be more than yours? Why kill a person who had some success at tilling a field, doesn't matter what the industry is, and producing a product? Like, why not just learn from them? If there are only a few industries and each of them are like pyramid structures, and there are only a few highly celebrated people at the top of each pyramid, most people make the base of the pyramid, right? Why do you have such lust for recognition that you have to be one of the people at the top of the pyramid? That's rarefied air. If you're talking about captains of industry who have given their lives to the machinery of hierarchy and industry in order to organize each industry. Those celebrated people, because they preside over thousands of people's increase. It's a shared increase. They have employees. Why do you have to climb that high? Why are you filled with that much competition? Well, the short version is you started out empty. In Christianity, that's called the state called original sin. And this emptiness, or some people call darkness, it's a darkness of emotional fortitude, or optimism. Okay, you're lacking an optimistic view of yourself. You're lacking. Now, you want it too much. You put too much stock in these social groups. You don't have family. They propose to be like replacement family, right? You think you got a group of people you identify with, and them keeping you in high regard means more than it should. And especially when the people engineering those social groups and the culture there in those social groups are puppeting you or weaponizing you. And then you wind out thinking that you're gonna climb to the top of a roof, you're gonna like take people out, and you think you're just gonna be the apple of this social group's eye. And the person behind that social group is not a person who really gives a shit about you. Um, and so you think, I'm gonna go out taking out these people. I don't care if I'm um, right or wrong. And if I told you there's this whole narrative in your whole social network that doesn't really, the narrator behind that group doesn't really care about you. Only the underlings in that group actually believe, drink the Kool-Aid and believe that the validation in the group is the real purpose of the group. No, it's a psychological piece of candy. Um, and so I've seen churches do this. When you're in a cult, and most institutions are cultish. It doesn't matter what institute. It could be a Catholic church is cultish. Democrat Party is cultish, and they all have this tier of believer, the lower tier that believes the camaraderie and believes the emotional nectar. And you believe it more, and you need it more when you either had a screwed up family or somebody talked shit about a perfectly good family to where you rejected it. And then either way, you want a replacement. You want a replacement for a no family, a shitty family, or a family that you came to believe was shitty because of people's ministering to you. In the end, to be used as a weapon for some strong man who organized your social group, whose real passion is against some other strong man who organized some other social group. To be a pawn like this, boy, that's some sad shit. But I can tell you this, if you didn't like what happened to you as a child, why don't you just go back in time? This time play the parent and be a better parent. And before you die, why don't you try that? Why don't you try having a child that you can rescue from a world that has no love? Your life would be more meaningful that way than being a living bomb for these upper tier organizers in these organizations, the chief of which is Satan, a guy who doesn't have love, who loved his job. And because God made his children, this guy thought his job security was threatened. So he caned out his original emotional Cain. Lucifer is the original emotional Cain. And he killed the son of God by separating that son from God through disobedience, right? So basically shooting God in the heart. Adam shot God in the heart just because Lucifer, as a handler of the younger Adam and Eve, weaponized Adam to shoot God in the heart. So I don't know what to tell you, but you're not going to win because there are future children, and the world would rather have a new proposition for the future of humanity than the original sin proposition. And because of that hope, you're not going to get very far. So, you know, get with God, and do a simple proposition of humbling yourself down, not being high profile. Just be a simple good mother, good father, or a good uncle to another family that has children that you know and care about, a good aunt, and pour your attention and your hopes for a simple world into your children. That has a lot of value. The absence of that is what causes people like you to create social networks of emptiness and grotesque ends. You get weaponized because of your emptiness. Anyway, emotion or love and the lack of love is stronger than the intellect. Okay, you think you're learning some ideology, but you don't really care about the ideology. You care about the fact that you share it with other people. Okay, you care about the feeling that the ideology is your coordinating idea, and now you have a people to be with. So that's why you're acting so irrationally. Nobody can appeal to you because you can't let the ideology that you guys orbit be harmed because you think that you're going to lose the pseudo family. And we know that that's what's going on with you. So um, chill, chill, before the next phase.